The Surgeon's Revenge. Did you really think that if you got pregnant, I'd just marry you? The wealthy young man spat at the college student. Years later, he would find himself under her scalpel. In the bustling hallway of the medical university, the clicking of Alina's heels echoed as she hurried to her next anatomy lecture, clutching a heavy textbook to her chest. The young woman had always dreamed of becoming a doctor. It wasn't just a whim, but a genuine calling. Her dark eyes sparkled whenever medicine was mentioned, and her neat notes were a testament to her dedication. Alina's student life followed a steady rhythm of lectures, practical sessions, seminar preparations, and, of course, sleepless nights poring over textbooks. A responsible student, she was serious about her studies and rarely allowed herself to be distracted. Her schedule left little room for fun, and her friends often teased her about it. One warm spring evening, they decided that Alina simply had to take a break and persuaded her to join them at a popular nightclub. You can't bury yourself in books all the time, they insisted, extolling the club's unforgettable atmosphere. At first, Alina resisted, embarrassed at the thought of spending a night not studying but on a dance floor. However, her friends were persistent, and she finally gave in, deciding to allow herself the small respite from her academic routine. When they entered the club, they were enveloped by an atmosphere of pounding music, bright lights, and general merriment. The music throbbed, and the shimmering lights created a dizzying vortex. At first, Alina found it all too loud and slightly jarring, but gradually, as she watched the others dance, she felt the tension leave her. Her friends on the dance floor looked genuinely happy, and she smiled, allowing herself to be immersed in the festive atmosphere. It was then that she noticed him. He was standing at the bar, tall and confident in an expensive dark suit that stood out against the casual attire of most of the patrons. His gaze was intense, attentive, and even a little challenging. Alina's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, as if from nowhere, he was next to her, offering her a cocktail with a charming smile. She immediately thought that any girl could easily lose her balance. "You're the most beautiful woman in this club," he said, and although his words were cliched, Alina suddenly felt that they sounded surprisingly sincere. Vlad, as he was called, didn't launch into a monologue about himself. Instead, he asked her questions about her studies, her interests, and her dreams. His genuine interest, as well as the ease with which he spoke, captivated Alina. This meeting turned out to be fateful. The following weeks flew by for Alina like a single day. Vlad courted her beautifully and lavishly, as if fulfilling her most secret fantasies. He invited her to expensive restaurants, showered her with bouquets of fresh flowers, and never ceased to amaze her with unexpected gifts. With him, Alina felt like the heroine of a fairy tale. She was certain that Vlad felt genuine, deep feelings for her, because with each day, he became closer and closer, introducing her to his friends and inviting her for weekends in the countryside, where they could relax from the hustle and bustle of the city and spend time alone. Vlad knew how to create surprises. Once, he arranged for her to take a sunset yacht ride; another time, a picnic in a picturesque spot that no one else seemed to know about. Alina, enchanted by his attention and generosity, fell more and more in love with this confident and charming man with each passing day. Her life was suddenly filled with events, feelings, and bright hopes for the future. It all seemed so real and mutual. The fairy tale ended abruptly and unexpectedly, like a road ending at the edge of a cliff. Alina was nervous as she prepared to meet Vlad, because the news of her pregnancy was both a shock and a joy. She imagined his eyes lighting up with happiness, how he would embrace her, how they would dream about their future life, about a shared home, and about the first steps of their child. Plans full of warmth and confidence already spun in her head. She would have been sure that Vlad would be happy, because over the months their relationship seemed strong and sincere, but instead of joy, she saw coldness in his eyes, which ran through her like a chill. The man who had been so attentive, kind, and caring now looked at her with irritation, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. His voice became piercing and alien, as sharp as shards of ice. "Get rid of it," he said without blinking, as if her news were nothing more than an unfortunate misunderstanding. "My parents will never accept a child from some student," he continued in an icy tone, and his words pierced her heart like a blade. "I'm not going to risk my inheritance because of this stupidity." Alina froze, her thoughts swirled like a vortex, and words barely escaped her lips. "I love you, we'll manage, Vlad, really, I'm sure of it." She still hoped that he would understand and support her, but he crushed her cruelly and with contempt. "Forget my number and don't even think about contacting me or my family. If you try, you'll regret it. I have enough connections to ruin the lives of both you and your bastard." Alina returned home on autopilot. The world around her faded. She barely remembered how she entered her room, fell onto the bed, and lay awake all night. The morning greeted her with the same bitter realization that the person she loved with all her heart turned out to be a cold and ruthless monster for whom her feelings and her child were worth nothing. The following days blurred into a continuous nightmare. Food tasted like ash, her eyes were puffy from tears, and thoughts raced through her head like hunted animals. School took a back seat. Alina seemed to exist in some other, empty dimension, but gradually, the pain began to recede, replaced by stubborn determination. She could no longer allow herself to be tormented. Alina knew that she would keep the child, that she would fight for him, and despite the loneliness and bitterness, she built a strong wall around herself and learned to cope with her new reality each day. The support of her parents and loyal friends helped her to keep her spirits up. 2 years passed, and life began to become more stable. Alina was about to finish university, combining her studies with raising little Dima. It wasn't easy: sleepless nights, constant fatigue, worries about money, but her persistence and faith in the future helped her overcome the difficulties. She tried not to think about Vlad, only occasionally did his face flicker in the news. The family business was thriving, and the media wrote about another success of their company, about new partnership projects. On the screen, he seemed as confident and lavish as when they had first met, but these news stories didn't touch her. Vlad became a part of the past that she tried to forget in order not to reopen old wounds. One morning, while browsing the news on her phone, her eyes stopped on a headline that made her freeze: "Tragedy in Africa, famous businessmen die from rare infection." Vlad's parents had gone on an exotic trip to African countries, where they contracted a virus from which it proved impossible to recover. The best doctors could do nothing, the disease was fatal, and Vlad's parents' lives were cut short far from home. The multi-million-dollar fortune passed to Vlad. She saw him in the news report, dressed in a black suit with a stony face. In his eyes, there was no trace of his former warmth. It seemed that his parents' death and the suddenly fallen wealth had finally turned him into what he always was inside: cold and calculating. Years went by. A sign reading "Head of Surgery Department" adorned her office door. The path to this position had been long and difficult, but she had managed it. Every morning, putting on her white coat, she felt pride in her choice. Her hands had saved hundreds of lives, and her reputation as a brilliant surgeon had long extended beyond the city. Colleagues respected her not only for her professionalism but also for her humanity. She always found time to listen, support, and offer advice. Dima, her son, had grown into a handsome young man with dark hair and his mother's dark eyes. When he announced his decision to enroll in medical school, Alina wasn't surprised. From childhood, he had been around the hospital while she was on duty, listening in awe to her stories about complex surgeries. Now, he was already in his third year, and the teachers couldn't praise him enough for his success. Life flowed steadily until fate presented an unexpected gift. At a medical conference in a neighboring city, she met Alexander Petrovich Knyazev, a well-known cardiac surgeon from a metropolitan clinic. Tall, fit, with distinguished gray at his temples, he immediately caught her attention with his reports on the latest techniques in cardiac surgery. He spoke confidently about unique operations, the application of advanced technologies, and his own innovative solutions, which were fascinating. In each of his gestures and glances, his passion was evident, and Alina suddenly felt in this man a kindred spirit, just as devoted to the profession as she herself. After the conference, while lost in thought, she met him by chance in a cozy cafe nearby, where he was sitting at a table with a cup of coffee and his notes. A casual conversation ensued that unexpectedly stretched until late evening. They discussed complex cases from their practice, shared experiences, argued about the nuances and advantages of various methods, easily moving from professional topics to more personal ones. Alina was struck by how inspired he was in the morning with his calls. Having exchanged phone numbers, they began to call each other. At first, exclusively about work, but soon their conversations became warmer and more personal. In the process of communicating, Alina learned that Alexander was a widower. His wife had died in a car accident 5 years ago. This loss alienated him from the world around him, and in order to cope, he fully immersed himself in work, ceasing to open up to new people. However, meeting Alina seemed to change something. Their romance developed rapidly, but thoughtfully. It contained neither youthful recklessness nor blind passion, but only calm confidence and mutual respect. These were the relationships of two mature people who knew exactly what they wanted from life, from themselves, and from each other. Even Alina's son, Dima, immediately accepted Alexander. Understanding and respect for Alina quickly established between them. One evening, when Alina was sorting through documents after a long workday, Alexander called, excited and unusually enthusiastic. "Alina, I urgently need to talk to you." On his voice sounded unusual nervousness. As it turned out, he had received an invitation from a leading European clinic offering a 6-month fellowship program for doctors that provided immersion in advanced technologies. He would experience recent developments in surgery, participation in unique operations, and invaluable exchange of experience with the best specialists in the world. This proposal could completely change their professional lives and give them a chance not only to develop their skills but also to develop their relationship in a new, unusual setting. "Marry me," he said simply and directly, without unnecessary words, looking her in the eye. "Not only because of the internship, I've wanted to propose for a long time. I just realized that I don't want to wait any longer." His voice sounded soft, but in this request, there was a determination coming from a person who truly understands what he wants from life. Alina looked into his honest, calm gray eyes and felt that the answer was obvious. She had found in him the only tranquility, warmth, and confidence that she had been seeking for many years. For the first time in many years, she felt truly happy and ready to start a new life. They decided to have a modest, quiet wedding, only close friends and relatives. No fuss and lavish celebrations, only a cozy evening among the dearest people. Dima was sincerely happy for his mother, although he was a little sad that he would have to live alone for 6 months while his parents were on an internship abroad. "It's okay, son, but later I will teach you such surgical techniques that are not in any textbook," Alina joked, trying to cheer him up. And he replied with a smile that he would wait for their return and try to become a worthy successor to the family business. The trip to Europe and joint internship became a real gift of fate, not only for professional growth but also for strengthening family ties. During the internship, they immersed themselves in work, mastering advanced surgical techniques, learning from outstanding specialists, working side by side in operating rooms, where they understood each other without a word, even a glance. In moments when the work became especially intense, they supported each other, and this feeling of unity gave strength and confidence. Colleagues and teachers joked they seemed to feel more comfortable with any illness, with Alina and Alexander feeling like one, a team in life and in the profession, and this made their union only stronger. After returning, their life was filled with new colors. Alina plunged headlong into work, implementing new techniques that she had learned abroad in performing complex operations that were previously considered impossible in her native hospital. Her name appeared in medical journals, her successes attracted the attention of even metropolitan specialists, and patients from all over the country came to her for consultations. It seemed that life had finally gotten better. Beloved work, a caring husband, a son who excelled in his studies, following in her professional footsteps, Alina was happy. Her world had gained a firm support and meaning, and the past almost ceased to remind her of itself. She had long stopped thinking about Vlad, he remained somewhere far away in the past, along with the pain and bitterness. She closed that page and seemed to finally free herself from memories, but fate always has its own plans. Their meeting occurred in the most unexpected way. That evening, Alina was on duty at the hospital. As usual, the evening was busy, she checked on patients and prepared reports. Suddenly, she was called to the emergency room. A patient with acute appendicitis complicated by peritonitis was brought in, a condition that required immediate surgery. Having prepared for the operation, she headed to the emergency room, habitually focusing on the task at hand, and suddenly froze. On the gurney lay Vlad, pale and tormented by pain. Alina stared, unable to believe her eyes. They hadn't seen each other for almost 2 decades, and before her stood a completely different person, gaunt and exhausted. Their gazes met. In his eyes, where there had once been coldness and arrogance, she saw recognition mixed with surprise, and perhaps even a shadow of fear. She didn't have time to fully grasp this expression, but something in it suddenly touched her heart, causing a dull wave of long-forgotten pain and at the same time, slight pity. But now was not the time for that. Every moment was precious, and before her stood one goal, to save his life. The operation was successful, performed with utmost concentration and professionalism. Putting aside all personal feelings and memories, her hands moved confidently, accurately, and precisely. Before her was just another patient, not the man who had once broken her heart. Having completed the operation, she made all the necessary appointments, checked Vlad's condition, and returned to her duties, hoping that their meeting would end there. It seemed to her that the past remained in the operating room, but it reminded herself in the morning already, so it happened. She knew nothing of his true character. To her, and to those around her, it was just another day of work. During the morning rounds, Alina learned that she was sought by a patient. Vlad demanded a meeting with the operating surgeon. As a professional, she understood that she could not refuse it. This was part of her responsibilities. In her heart, she didn't want to meet him again. The best approach, for me as the head surgeon, is to follow the patient's demands, she said to herself. She took a deep breath and headed towards the patient's room. As she entered, Vlad sat up in bed, smiling slightly. He looked tired, but as always, he was smiling confidently. "Alina, I've always thought about you," said the man. His voice was warm, almost enticing, but in his heart, there was a different feeling. Those years of isolation has now turned into a different one. "Maybe, this is just a sign that destiny brought us together. You have always been in my mind. I mean it. Can't you tell? We were so good together back then," Vlad continued. With a slow and steady move, he tried to touch her fingers, but Alina quickly moved her hand away. "If you have no questions with your current health state, then I should go now. The other patient needs my assistance," she said with cold voice. "Wait, are you married?" Vlad asked, and his tone showed a mixture of curiosity, as if she's accustomed to people following his demands. "This has nothing to do with you," Alina replied. With a strong and powerful voice, she turned away, leaving him behind. She did not think she would ever feel this powerful. It was a sign of relief. After that experience, Alina did what she could to avoid Vlad by not accepting his calls, answering his questions, and even just looking him in the eye. She just wanted it all to end. It was something that was part of her dark past. She couldn't feel any worse, as it was a sign that her nightmares are starting to come true. She did what she can to not make it, as the fear of what could happen always gets the best of her. The next day, at her office, she found a lot of expensive flowers all over her table. Day after day, there would always be expensive roses, orchids, and a wide variety of other types. All were as the gifts to entice her love and make her forgive the past that she would never forget. She gave it to others without any regrets, she just didn't care. It was a sign that whatever happens, she must never look back and be as strong as she could be. Vlad still tried to catch her by always being in the hospital hallways and just always staring at her. He never made any progress, as the look of disgust was always on her face. Alina was good at avoiding him. There would always be an escape route for her. It was something she was good at. "Maybe, I need to step up things a bit," Vlad thought, as it was not going according to plan. All he wanted to do was to have Alina back, and he was willing to risk everything. With all that money that his parents left him, what could go wrong? Nothing could go wrong as he had so much power. One chilly autumn evening, after Alina's workday ended, Vlad was waiting for her outside the main entrance of the hospital. He's here. Alina thought, with an uncomfortable look on her face. She knew that the time would come, it is what she has been thinking for years now. As she got closer, she found a white Lexus, the car that she was about to ride on. She was annoyed and shocked, but before she could say anything, Vlad spoke. I always get what I want, so this is going to happen. Sooner or later, you will be mine again, Vlad said, with a confident tone. With a smile, Alina stepped out from her car. At that moment, one of the vehicle's door opened and a young man went outside. Alina was shocked, as he looked like the younger Vlad. He looked like he went back in time. Alina thought to herself, that must be my son, the one that bastard left me with. Mom, is everything all right? The man said, his voice sounded filled with concern. I'm all right, darling. He just mistook me as someone else, Alina replied. Alina was just surprised, but before she could even go closer to her son, Vlad asked. Who is that? I thought you were not dating anyone. He's my son, the one that you wanted me to get rid of. The rumors about Alina and the man immediately spread all over the hospital. Her co-workers were happy for her, and those feelings showed how happy they are. Dr. Alexander, her fiancé, was happy, so was her son. He was looking forward for a baby sister to come. It looked as if nothing can break that peace, but one man was having all sorts of bad thoughts. If I can't have her, then she can't have me. We will see. Vlad always thought to himself. He was not happy with this situation. Everything he has done, all those sacrifices, all those efforts, all of it was for nothing. How could this be? The obsession got worse by the day. He would always send her gifts and flowers, try to talk to her but to no avail, and even showed up at medical conferences to see her again. However, Alina brushed it off as nothing more than a nuisance. She did what she can to protect what she has. She was happy, and no one should ever take that from her. One morning, her little baby Sophia arrived. The baby angel looked just like her mother. All those years of sadness have been replaced with an angel's touch. Natalia was looking for her. For the first time in a long time, she felt that all her dreams have been realized. Vlad learned of the birth of the baby. A picture taken by a nurse was circulating all over social media. With me? With them? Ha, you're all fools, Vlad said with a burst of laughter. If I can't have all of you, then neither can you. It had to be done, whatever it takes he will do it. The rage he had could never be replaced by anything. The past that was made has now consumed his very essence. The money, those connections, those experiences, all of that, to hell. He started to concoct a plan. He paid someone to watch her family, the places they frequent, and those they talk to. All just for him to get what he wants. In his mind, there was nothing more important than getting Alina back. One night, baby Sophia was gone, and the sitter was just as confused. Alina was in an operation when this happened. It all started with a phone call. Baby Sophia was gone. Everything changed when those words were heard. It looked as if the world has now turned against her. With all that training, Alina remained calm to finish the surgery. As soon as she finished, she rushed out of the hospital. The police arrived immediately. Everything changed so fast. There was no time. Every second she has to wait makes her even more afraid. When they finally did, she was in terror. Alexander arrived at the location. His face was cold and worried. There were emotions that was hard to express. Who would do this? Alexander said, but at those times it didn't matter who did this, they had to just focus on finding baby Sophia. Dima found out, and he dropped out from school to help find her sibling. I can't believe it's happening, it's a nightmare. I can't do this. That was the most painful thought he had. Soon, a message was sent to Alina's phone. Now you know what it feels like to lose a child. If you want her back, then come alone. Alina showed it to the people with her anger, hate, sadness, and all sorts of negative feelings were expressed. Dima asked, how can anyone do this? What is going on? Silence took over the room. There was so much the family did not know, but now the time has come to tell the truth. It was time to face the past that she always hid. Alina, with a heavy heart, looked at her son, his eyes filled with confusion and fear. There's something you need to know, she began, her voice trembling. A long time ago, before I met your father. She recounted the story of her youth, of her whirlwind romance with Vlad, and of his cruel rejection when she told him about the pregnancy. She spoke of her difficult decision to raise Dima alone, protecting him from the truth about his biological father. Each word was like a stone falling into a silent pool, creating ripples of shock and disbelief. Dima listened intently, his face growing paler with each revelation. The comfortable world he knew was crumbling around him. So, he is the one who stole my sister, he finally choked out, the words laced with disgust. My real father? Dima, listen, Alexander interjected, but Dima cut him off, his voice raw with emotion. No, Dad. You are my real father. You were there for me, you raised me, you loved me. He's just biological material. And now he's kidnapped my sister. He stood up abruptly, his anger fueling a sudden resolve. We need to do something. Now. Dima, despite his turmoil, was a medical student, trained to think rationally, even in the face of chaos. Mom, you can't go there alone. It's too dangerous. I have a plan. The three huddled together, poring over maps, discussing escape routes, and analyzing Vlad's likely motivations. Time was of the essence, but they couldn't afford to act rashly. Little Sophia's life hung in the balance. As Alina, Alexander, and Dima meticulously crafted their strategy, each driven by their unwavering commitment to one another, Vlad, isolated in his extravagant mansion, surveyed the tranquil, sleeping infant in the antique cradle. He could see Sophia wasn't crying as if there was some sort of spell, one that he was about to break. Vlad struggled to muster any sincere sentiments toward the youngster. To him, much like everything else in his world, Sophia served solely as a means to fulfill an objective. He was completely blind to the truth about her, that was more than just a baby, an actual person. As time stretched on and his cell phone remained silent, Vlad started to feel unsettled. Was his scheme set up for failure? Will not Alina come to him, as a sign of her motherly love? Or perhaps was she already making a trap, or had she made one? He had no idea of the moment, but knew very well what was coming. Despite being completely oblivious to the unfolding scheme, they had crafted a clever trick. It was one that had to be executed flawlessly. Alina cautiously drove into the assigned location with her heart beating and in a state of shock. She was trying what she can to keep her heart in check. After years of hard work and with the assistance of Alexander and Dima, she finally felt as if something was coming to place. Alexander and Dima had been waiting for her nearby to quickly assist should she ever make contact with her. After getting into place, they went over what would come. It was as simple as it can get, and it had to be. As the door started to open, Alina started to approach with a stern look. There was little to no light from the hallway as she started to walk up the stairs. With the help of a bit of light from Sophia's room, Alina quickly made her way into the room. Her main goal was to save the child. It was nothing more than a war at this point. A war of her happiness. Vlad had been looking at her in her room with an evil smile and a menacing look. Everything was falling into place. As he got out of the seat, Alina spoke with a powerful voice. What do you want? All of this, it has to stop. You had always made all of these wrong assumptions. All of this is not right. Vlad would take a step and Alina would approach Sophia. This was a dangerous game and could cost her everything. She had to keep her calm and know what was coming. Alina, I just want you back. This could all be a fairy tale if you were just my wife, said Vlad. There was a lot he had to say, a lot to get off his back. You knew, for a lot of years, that you could make all of this be a dream come true, but did you? No. This is all just for yourself. All you do is care about what you feel, but you never cared for what I feel, as a human. As the light shined a bit more, the moment that Alina could, she grabbed the child and ran. It was at this moment that the whole plan changed. It was something that Dima and Alexander had to improvise. After all this time, all of these mistakes, I made all of these for you. Vlad felt helpless. It had always been him against them, but there was a twist. What if all of this never happened? It was nothing more than a dream. Sorry, Vlad, but this all has to end, Alina said to him before running out of the house. With his face filled with horror, he stood there in silence. What have I done? Vlad thought to himself, as it was time to reflect on those actions. But it was time to go. As Alina was running outside the place, she saw both Alexander and Dima running towards her for an exchange. The police are coming, Dima said, with an urgent tone. It is time for you to pay for your crimes, or lack of caring. Alex spoke, as Alina quickly made her way into the Lexus with Sophia. The love and care she had for her child was something she had to always protect. Nothing should ever happen. It looked as if everything had been planned perfectly, which is what they had to have to happen. As soon as they got on the road, Alexander stepped on the gas. It was a new and exciting day for the family. They are now stronger than ever. At his mansion, Vlad stood and had finally understood what love really is. It was at this moment he knew, it is all over. All those years had gone to waste. It was a complete and utter mess. As he looked at his reflection in the mirror, his world was now crashing down. I wonder, what if I call the police at this very moment, and just surrender? Could the world change, as I have changed? Vlad wondered, still looking at that window. It was time for that family to heal, he knew that. No matter what he does or whatever he does, it would all be for nothing. He felt a deep sense of guilt. Back at Elena's place, everyone started to eat at the table. It was such a happy day and everything was complete again. They were not in fear anymore, everything was going to be all right. They are all together. Elena felt a huge sense of relief. All of that was done. There was nothing she had to fear for. Her loved ones were in her arms again and nobody could ever take them away. I'm so happy, Mom, I know you were safe, Dima replied with a huge smile. He knew that his mom had sacrificed so much for him, so everything should be paid back with happiness. A moment with her was as important as life itself. They have an unbreakable bond that no one could change. Alexander started to grab both of them with a hug. It was a sign of thanks. He was thankful for Elena, as he had never met someone as strong as Elena, with all those hardships that she was able to rise and go on. No matter how much he did for her, it still felt like it was not enough. As the sun went up and a brand new day began, everything turned around. It was finally time to not look back and take hold of a brighter future. A future with love and prosperity. Elena looked around the table and was thankful for everything. This was the life that she was always meant to have, she just had to find her place. Some few years later, everyone was living their best lives. Dima would visit them from time to time and would always bring the best stories that have happened to him. Baby Sophia had grown a bit and started to look just like her mom. As for Elena, she had finally earned all the rewards that she deserved. Her fame as a surgeon had grown tremendously and had helped a lot of lives. All of that hate that she had felt for all of those years had now turned into love. It was finally peace at last, she had finally did it. One day, a person visited her to seek help. It was a heart-related problem. I need your help, doc. You're my only hope, the patient said. He looked exhausted and filled with regret. As Elena glanced at his name, she was in shock. She had not said those words to anyone, but now that it had been done to her, it felt wrong. That patient was Vlad. As he went into the operating table, Elena prepared herself and told herself that everything that happened was all just part of her past. Now, she had to do what was right. It's time for you to feel my pain. Elena thought to herself, or so she had planned. But no matter how much she tried, her medical oath always had to come first. This was no more a personal issue, but a life. Elena prepared herself and started the operation. With the experience that she had, the procedure went successfully. Vlad was all healthy again. I owe you my life, thank you, Vlad said. There was a small sense of gratitude, but nothing more than that. All of those years, it didn't change him one bit. If you want to repay, I'll tell you now. Go and live life to the fullest. Show her that I could never be the best for her. Let her live a happy life. And lastly, never show your face to my family again. With those words, Elena walked away and never saw Vlad again. Her medical life never got in the way of all her personal problems, and that was the greatest gift that she has achieved. Elena would go on to help and save thousands of lives. She was also rewarded and was given all the blessings that she could receive. This was a success story. From rags to riches, Elena had done it. As for Vlad, nobody knew what had happened to him. Some say he turned into a better man and lived a new life. Some say he died all alone. But with all that, she knew that everything had fallen into place. 10.0s. Okay, here's the continued and refined version of the text, maintaining the tone, structure, and intent of the original while using varied language. Back in the sterile quiet of the hospital, amidst the hushed whispers and the glow of monitors, Elena knew she had made the right choice. The scalpel had been her equalizer, and in that operating theater, she had risen above the bitterness that had threatened to consume her. Later that evening, as the city lights twinkled outside her window, Elena found herself reflecting on the strange twist of fate that had brought Vlad back into her life. There was no triumphalism, no satisfaction, only a quiet sense of closure. Elena returned home to the warm embrace of her family. They had been through the storm together, and the bonds that held them together had only grown stronger. Dima, now a confident young man with a bright future ahead of him, was a constant source of pride. Alexander, her rock, her partner, stood by her side, his love a steady beacon in the turbulent seas of her past. He knew what was coming, just because the years didn't matter. Life, as it always does, moved on. Dima graduated from medical school and began his residency, eager to follow in his mother's footsteps. Sophia blossomed into a bright and inquisitive young girl, filling their home with laughter and joy. Elena continued to excel in her career, pioneering new surgical techniques and earning the respect of her peers. The hospital became her sanctuary, a place where she could channel her passion and use her skills to heal others. The scars of the past faded, replaced by the satisfaction of a life well lived. As years rolled, with all of their own time, and a day came to Elena that was more than just a dream and has been proven with everything to get to it. This was a time to truly shine. One day, a prestigious medical journal published an article about Elena's groundbreaking work, hailing her as a visionary in the field of cardiac surgery. Invitations to speak at conferences poured in from around the world. Elena, once a young woman struggling to make ends meet, had become an internationally recognized figure. This would make others feel that they can also make their dreams come true. During one of her international travels, Elena received the news. Dima wanted to go to her hospital in order to learn from his mother. She was filled with joy, with that Elena's legacy would finally come to fruition. However, that was only half of all of her rewards, as it turned out Dima met someone. His name was Lucas, and he came from an ordinary family that was all so gentle, that all those years of hardship had been worth it. After meeting them, everything was alright, but there was a twist. As they were about to get married, Lucas was diagnosed with a heart disease and was needing help. Elena knew exactly what to do. This was the time. She knew that with all that time, it will all come down to this. This was her time to shine, a time to show them that life may be tough, but it is not all just that. She had to stay strong, even to those who had never been. She immediately stepped and told her son that it was all going to be okay. As she ran to the laboratory, she had to analyze the issue to ensure that it will not happen again. This was what made her a great surgeon. She had to protect that joy and care she had for family. And in the end, she was successful. At the table, the next day, Elena finally said all of her secrets to everyone and told them what had happened that night. Everyone was shocked. "I am so proud of you," Alexander said, with a hug. "I love you, Mom, with all that effort, to ensure we are happy, I just love you," Dima replied with his head down. "I love you too. Remember, everyone deserves to be happy. Just make sure that we are always there for each other."